In this video, we are going to be looking at doing a valve clearance adjustment on this 2018 Suzuki Strom DL650. And by this point, we have already done a valve clearance check. I had a video on that, so we know what our valve clearances are. This bike here has about 5,000 miles on it. I'm doing this 10,000 miles before the 14,500 mile checkup that actually calls for this, but it's winter, so I figured I would do it. And before I get started, I did want to give a little bit of context to this, because if you just go by the manual, you'll disassemble half the bike. One of the things that I wanted to do was to see if I could do this without removing the rear wheel. Anyway, if you have looked up doing this valve adjustment for a DL650, good chance you've come across this document. I printed out the pages relevant to the valve clearance adjustment, not the check. Unfortunately, some of these pictures seem to be disappearing from the internet, or he's got like it's super low resolution and whatnot, and I wanted to give a little bit more context to this. So on this bike, we want to remove the exhaust camshaft, which is down here, because we're not going to be changing the intakes, but it's just as simple to change the intakes as it is the exhaust. But we need to get this cam chain guide off. It is a 5mm Allen. Alright, so the guide's off now, and I'm going to have a lot of tension on the cam chain, and this is why we need to remove the tension on the cam chain, so that when we remove this camshaft holder here that holds it onto the journals, that we can pull this up a little bit and then actually remove the entire camshaft. What I want to do is line the motor up on the F here. Hopefully you can see the F. I've got it right on the F mark. If you don't see those cam lobes, see how it's poking like right at me? That's here. Basically, this exhaust, it's pointing that way. It's like pointing, I can touch it. It's right there. It's pointing right at the front wheel. This is where I want it to be. If you don't see this cam lobe, you're 360 degrees off. This is where you want it. Now, we need to loosen the tension on this chain here, which is where we're gonna get to our cam chain tensioner, which is down through there. Now, since it's a little difficult to explain what the cam chain tensioner is exactly doing, I'm going to do a little bit of YouTube stealing and show you like 10 seconds of this Mad 8V video where he's showing the operation of a Gen 2 cam chain tensioner, but the Gen 3 works the same.
Pull the spring out. So, come on. Really long bolt. So bolt and spring, but look, it doesn't go back. What you need to do is press this little tab, then you can slide it back. Then you can install it, then you can pop the spring back in, and when you pop the spring back in, it'll ratchet out.
So that's why we don't have to remove the entirety of the cam chain tensioner on this one. We just need to get that bolt out. Let's see if we can see it. You see it right there? It's a 12mm bolt. We need to pull that out, and you saw that the spring's gonna come with it. The printed instructions from that other guy says try to leave it on top here because it's going to make reassembly way easier. One thing I did is I zip tied this big piece of wiring harness to the side because it keeps it out of the way. If not, it's like smack dab over the center of it and it's just not going to be able to come up. Now we're going to relieve the tension on the cam chain on the front cylinder, and straight through there, this isn't going to film well, but I have a 12mm socket and I can actually get a straight run right through it. There's going to be wires and stuff in the way, but you see, I've actually got it on there without having to use a U-joint or anything. So I want to loosen this, and I want to pull it off of it. So crack it, move your airbox around apparently. All right, there is no good view of this outside of it's right there and it's no longer sitting on it. I can't get a good view, but the tension isn't off of it yet, because we need to get inside of here and relieve the tension on the cam chain tensioner based on that video from Mad 8V on how we relieve the tension, which means we have to put a screwdriver and just hit that little tang or whatever the hell it's called. That. Oh, there we go. Well, I gotta hit the top of it. Oh shit, my bad, I was hitting the bottom. Okay, hit the top of it, pulls it up, and then it can relieve some tension. Now, I still think there's some more to go on there, but I've got more tension there, so I'm going to play with that a little bit until I've got enough. All right, so this is why it's a pain in the ass to film, but if I was pushing on the cam chain and also pushing on the tab, the top of that tab, that allowed it to go all the way out. This is the loose cam chain I was looking for. Now what we want to do is remove these cam journals. You can see I've already got the intake one, the top one, off. This is a number 6 hex, and these should, nice, so they aren't going to be torqued that tight. They shouldn't be torqued that tight, and we're going to take all 6 of these off. All right, all 6 bolts are off. Now we got to pull the journal or the camshaft holder off, and you wiggle it enough, it should start to come up. It is on those 2 dowels, so if you come in here with a hammer, you're not going to be making a whole lot of progress. If you don't see 2 dowels, then there's probably an issue, and you got to go searching for it. I pulled one of the dowels. That is this one here. I'm actually going to put it right there again, and this one. So when I put this back on, they're already sitting on the engine. So I'm not sure how well this is going to show, but this is what we're looking for. If we're in the right spot, we should have a 1F pointing flush with the front right there, and we should have a 19 pointing flush with the intake side right there. There'll be a 2 there and a 3 there, but if we got the 1 flush right there, the 19 flush right there, a 2 mark right here, and a 3 mark right there, we should have 16 pins between them. So first I'm going to check if we got that 1 flush, and then I'm going to count out the 16, and I'm going to mark them with a Sharpie. This is my 1 flush right there. I'm going to hit that with a silver Sharpie. There's my 19F right there. I'm hitting that with a silver Sharpie. There's the 2 right here, there, and there's the 3 there. It's that pin. Now there should be 16 between those. Well, 16 including the 2 on the ends. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So long as these camshafts stay in the exact same place, we will not affect the timing. That's what we want to do, not affect the timing. I'm going to see if I can finagle this guy out of here. Now I still got that marked. Hopefully I won't wash that off. And even if I do, I can still find my spot because those markings are still going to be on there. The 1R, 1L, something like that, and then the 19 up there. This is where that zip tie is going to come in, so I haven't allowed it to move yet. And maybe this, you can do this instead of the bungee, and I don't think you need to do this, but in the interest of experimentation, I'm going to do this zip tie here. Now we'll work on the left side here first. So grabbing a magnet, I'm going to pull the bucket, and hopefully the shim comes with it. It should come straight out. I can see the shim, it did come with it. So here's my bucket, and here's my shim that I pulled out of it. This one is stamped with 165 on it, which means I want to drop down to a 160 because that's going to open up my 0.9T to 0.011T. So I'm going to put this 165. I'm not tossing it. I'm keeping it for later. I'm putting that there, but I want to put one of my new 160s in here, and that's going to go back into the engine, and that's going to be 1 shim size down. Then for reinstallation, I found it's actually a little bit tougher to try to put it on shim and bucket at the same time. And I tried to just get everything with a coat of oil on it, and I'm going to put the shim in first. And I think, not that it ultimately matters, but I think I want to put the writing down, so that goes there. And then the bucket, just load her up with some oil, and the bucket goes in there, and a little bit more oil up top. Then do the exact same thing on the other one. Both the left and the right exhausts were identical. They had 165s, and I switched them to 160s. And I'm going to be cutting links, or counting links. So I'm going to show you something here that's a potential major fuck up if I don't go back and double check this. It's kind of tough because these do rotate. Now I've moved these around a bit. These do rotate, so it's kind of tough to tell when the 1F here is flush and when it's not. And this looks good to me, but you gotta count that there's 16 between this 2 and the 3. And I just checked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm off 1 tooth. I have to rotate this exhaust 1 more tooth down, and I thought I had it, but I didn't. All right, come on. There, that's 1 tooth down, right there. So now I'm gonna check. I've got the 1F, that's flush, but it does move around. Here's the 2, there's the 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's where I actually want to be. We're gonna button this thing back up. Do not rotate the motor until you've got the camshaft holders back on it, or else you can get yourself into a world of trouble. So I went through with my little brush. I'm just putting oil on everything. There, that's where we want it, right there. Let's get the intakes on. So now to button these camshafts back up, we've got the bolts back in, the holders back in. We haven't put the guide on yet. So these, you want to torque these down in crisscross pattern. So there, there. I'm going real light. I just want to get it so it's touching. There, and then there, there, and there. Then you grab your torque wrench, and these are going to 90 inch-pounds. So what I want to do now, before I start thinking about the rear cylinder, and before I start buttoning anything up, I don't want to put the valve cover on this until I've actually adjusted the rear one, is I want to check to make sure I actually went the right way and that my shims were correct. So this is a .009, and I could fit it in there much easier than I could before. I could not fit it in there before. So I think I'm going to have a .011. This is a .010, and I'm able to fit it in there, but it's pretty tight. And I'm able, that one's even tighter, but I can still get it in there. Now let's try a .011. That's super tight, but it fits. That's probably going to be an 11 tight. That one's even tighter. 11 tight. Now if I'm at the .012 and I can go past that, I may have adjusted myself out of tolerance, which wouldn't be cool, but I got a feeling, not a chance. Not a chance. Those are where I want them. That's good news. Now I want to put some tension back on this chain. So I'm going to put that cam chain tensioner for the front. I'm going to put that or actually it's not, it's still sitting on there. The spring and the plug, I'm just going to screw those back in. So I'm going to be reinstalling that cam chain tensioner. I probably should have left the guide off just for this video, but you can see I can still rock these, and that's because of the looseness within that chain. All right, maybe this will show. So I'm going to get my 12 back on that plug, which I never pulled out, which still has a spring sitting on it. You hear that clicking, that means it's starting to push onto the chain. Okay, I just started threading. I hadn't done it before. I didn't want to go over tight. I can hear clicks every once in a while as it's putting more tension on the chain, and that cam chain tensioner is extending out. Now this thing gets torqued down to 17 foot-pounds. Now you can see these aren't moving anymore. It's got tension on that chain. That's what we want. I don't want to button this thing up until we've adjusted the rears, because I want to rotate the engine several times, recheck the clearances before I button anything up so I don't have to redo everything later, just as a double check at the end. Now when I move the engine next, I think we're going to rotate this 360 degrees, and we're actually, even though we're adjusting the rear, we're not going to put it to the rear mark. We're not adjusting it in top dead center of the rear. We're actually going to put this mark here back to the F. It sounds counterintuitive, but that's how the timing's going to line up to what the manual wants on those diagrams. And if you go to the R on this, it's not going to look correct. So Gonna rotate this 360. Now I'm rotated 360 degrees forward, and realistically this is probably gonna prove impossible to film. But that's the rear cam chain tensioner right there. This one looks so much easier to work on, and in fact this part is, if we can deal with the rear cam chain tensioner. On an SV650 it's a pain in the ass because you got to remove the whole thing. I think we can get that whole thing out without having to remove the rear wheel. If this becomes too difficult, I'll remove the whole rear wheel, but I think we can do it without it. And I think all you're gonna need is a couple 3/8 extensions, a U-joint on the end with a 12. If you see that black plug right there, that's what we gotta hit. There is no straight shot to it. That's the tricky part about this. That's where we're gonna have to get that U-joint on it, and I'm gonna see if I can break that thing open, lower the plug, and lower the spring with it. Oh, there it is. It caught. It caught. All right. Damn, I can't do this with the fucking camera on my head. Oh. Okay. So you can see the rear cam chain tensioner sitting right there. It is hanging loose. I'll be able to adjust it. The problem is I'm gonna have to push that thing all the way back in and tighten it. That's what I'm wondering if I'm gonna be able to do without removing the rear wheel. I've released all of the bolts, or removed all the bolts from the journal or the cam guide holder thinger right here. So the two dowels, kitty corner, I'll eventually get this up. There. Just want to make sure I don't lose those dowels. One's here, one's there. One dowel came up with me, one is still there. Now, if you were adjusting the intakes, you would take this off. I'm not adjusting the intakes, so I'm not taking this off. I'm also not zip tying the cam chain on there because I don't like that. Now we have all of the slack still because I haven't relieved any of the tension, because I got to get down on that cam chain tensioner just like we did with the front, and I got to push on that tab, and then it'll push it all the way out. The cam chain tensioner, it'll push it, well, it won't push it, it'll let it go all the way out, and then I'll be able to remove this exhaust camshaft. Probably should have filmed it, but the instant I relieved that pressure, the cam chain bolt, washer, and spring just dropped right to the floor. As I expected, rear cam chain tensioner, gonna be the most difficult part of this entire job. But you can see there is no tension on here. Should be able to, I think I'm gonna string this up this way when I pull the cam, when I pull the camshaft off. I'm just gonna pull a bungee, just pull it up this way. It says it's not gonna fall off, I still don't trust it. I'm gonna pull it up over that way. So what I should also show on the rear to make sure we're in the right spot is that we want this 1R flush with the front. That's on the intake, the 1R there, and then we've got a 3 and a 2. 3 and a 2. So there's the 1R, it's pointing flush there. There's the 2 there, and then there's the 3, which is impossible to shoot because of the shit that's in the way, but there's a 3 right there. I'm gonna count to make sure I've got my 16 links between there. I'm gonna mark them, and this is exactly where I want to put this exhaust camshaft back once I'm done swapping shims. All right, can we get the camshaft out? Yes, we can. There, that's better. We got the cam chain held up, and we've got our camshaft out. Now we can swap some shims. Should be the same as front. I say let's do left first. Grabbing left, pulling. Shim is in it, so we shall come over here. This is a little bit different. This is a 168, which makes my life more difficult, because that is an in-betweener. So that's likely going to go down to a 165 because I don't want to open these up that much. You want to get the two of them as close as possible, so maybe I should actually pull the right out at the... Nah, fuck that. I'm going down one full size or whatever is the lowest between those two. I'm not going over one full size, so if it's a 160, I'll go down to 155. If it's a 170, I'll go down to 165. If it's a 168, I'll go down to 165. I'm not going any more than that because I will get over the loose tolerance if I do. So I got a 168. This is a 165 right here. This is the one that's going in. This is going into its own bag because I don't have any other 168s because the refill packs don't come in 160. All right, so another part that's going to be impossible to film. I did change the shims on both of these. This was a 168. I moved it to a 165. This was a 165. I moved it to a 160. Now I want to reinstall this. All I got to do, so I've got this marked. So long as that mark on this chain and that camshaft don't move, well, then I'm fine. Now the issue is I got to take this bungee off and I got to come on this side and I got to mark this, or I got to get this thing back in. And so once I do, I should have 16 links between these two things. So I'm going to do that right now. We'll count them, make sure, and then we're certain that nothing has moved. This one was a little bit trickier to get in just because it's so much harder to see because of the shit in the way. But I know that this one, the intake has not moved. So my 2 is right here and my 1R is flush right there. So what I was struggling with earlier was getting 16 links between them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And that's this guy right here, exactly right on the number 3. So I haven't changed the timing at all on this. You're just gonna have faith that I can get this bendy screwdriver here to get this in. This is what you want. A wiggly, wiggly, wiggly screwdriver. So now I've got this tightened down. I've spun the motor a couple times. And the reason I spun it a couple times because I want to make sure that if there is going to be some catastrophic error, that some oversight, that I don't want to hit a valve into the top of the piston. So I did not adjust the intakes. I adjusted the exhaust here. And these were both 9 tight, so I'm going to check them. I've got it on the rear mark right now, and the lobes are pushing up that way. So 0.009 fit in there. 0.009 fit in there. So now I want to try my 0.010. There's a 0.010 right there. That one's pretty tight. That one's less tight. This is the one I had less clearance change on. This went from a 168 to a 165 shim. This went from a 165 to a 160 shim. So I expect this one to be tighter. Both of them fit the 0.010. There's not a chance in hell they're going to fit a 0.012, but let's see if either of them can fit a 0.011. That one does. Super tight, 0.011. And then what about left exhaust? Oh, it did fit it. All right, I'm super tight, 0.011 on both. I guess to finish it off, does a 0.012 fit? If it does, then I may have overshot. I don't think so. I don't think so. So, super tight, 0.011, super tight, 0.011. Cam chain tensioner is in. Spinning it a couple of times. I kept hearing it click every once in a while. And that's pretty much it. Button it up. A little bit of Honda bond, Suzuki bond, Yamaha bond, whatever kind of bond right there, there, and there. Put the valve covers back on, put the rest of the bike on. You know, do all the things in reverse. That should be it. I won't post this until I know it's running. I don't have any leaks and everything's all good, but that's a valve clearance adjustment. So then any valve adjustment I have ever done in my life, I've slept on it for the night, and then rechecked everything in the morning 3 times. So I checked all the valve clearances again, they all look fine. The biggest thing I'm worried about is the timing, so take the valve cam chain guides back off, realign it, everything, count the 16 pins 3 times after rotating it. This is the first fuel injected bike I've ever worked on, so still a little bit worried because I don't know what I could have missed. I got about 1,400 of the 1,700 milliliters of coolant in it that I think I need to get into it. I flushed the rear brake because why not, it's right there. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to do an oil change, but I just think all those things are easy to do if you've gotten into here. But the big scary thing is seeing what's going to leak. Coolant, fuel, or I drop a valve and destroy the motorcycle, or the motor. We'll find out. See if I can find any leaks, and not too long because I want to get some more coolant in there before it gets hot. Then I'll let it get hot, do an oil change, come back and top off the coolant once it cools down. So neat. Now if you've watched this far, thanks for watching.